Welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I'm Bennett Conlin, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. And Jack, it's good to be back on a podcast.
It's been a long time. I feel like I really haven't talked to you all that much. We haven't texted that much because you've been vacationing. So you explicitly actually texted me and said, don't ever text me for the next week or I
I said,
will.
don't reach out. Yeah.
Yep. He said, I don't want to hear you. I don't want to talk to you about anything. I don't care what's happening. No, but it's been a while. I think we had a week off. Then we had kind of a modge podge of interviews put together last week for the podcast. This week we're back. We have a bunch of interviews on slate. A lot has happened though since the last podcast.
Yeah, baseball ended its season. We've got football. 2025 recruiting is heating up. A lot can change, as we know from last year with a high school class before signing day. But the early returns look good, look exciting. It's always nice when you get into June and you get some high school recruits committing. It's a very slow news cycle in June, so it adds a little excitement, I would say.
Yeah, today it was just kind of watching everything roll in and exciting to see everyone come in. We got Jerald James, an edge rusher who committed earlier today. He's scheduled to come on the podcast in just a little bit. And Kai Collin, I will confirm how to pronounce his last name, but I'm going to right now assume that the speedster from Carrollton, Georgia, originally from Idaho, I believe. He'll come on the podcast a little bit later as well. But first, before we get into anything, we just have to remind you guys that BetOnline is your number one source for all of your sports betting needs this season. Baseball, golf, soccer, right to all the top fights in the UFC, MMA, and boxing. And don't forget the Stanley Cup finals are still going on, and you can bet on all of that with BetOnline. Every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Promo code BELIEVE for 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online. The game starts here.
We love that.
Always great. Always great. The game starts here. So we'll be joined by Jerald James first in about 3-ish or so minutes. But Bennett, before we dive into all of that, there's some more housekeeping stuff, but we can sprinkle that in throughout the podcast. Initial thoughts on this commit class. This is, I think, the first time I've seen you excited about a commit class. I guess that's what you call them.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit for me to get super stoked about high school recruiting because it's hard to know exactly how good players are compared to the portal where you've got like stats from a school and tape against college players usually, or almost every time, right? Unless they're like somebody who played at a Power 5 for a year and then comes over. But I think the big thing that stands out to me is just the level of recruit that JMU is getting the last couple of years is significantly better than like 5 years ago. And obviously the FBS leap is huge, but having success at the FBS level is big. And they were getting guys like Jalen Green, Nick Kidwell, like some of these guys that were FCS recruits, quote unquote FCS guys, were clearly good enough to play at the FBS level, right? That wasn't a shock. But I think it's their backups in the third string guys that are way different. And that's what's exciting to me is you look at JMU's roster, they're getting to a point where there aren't many holes. They're a lot deeper than they've been in previous seasons. And to me, that's just a level of talent across the board that's interested in JMU increasing rather dramatically. And I think we've seen that where they're adding players, whether it's in the portal or from high school, that seem like they're just better than the guys JMU could get 5 years ago, which is super exciting considering the type of coaches they've had, Signetti, and now you've got Chesney, who are supposed to be incredible at developing and building camaraderie and all these things. We'll see what Chesney does in his first season, but it's hard not to be excited about sort of the future of the program, given their ability to bring in high-level talent.
Maybe I'm overreacting to just the first few guys coming through in this class, but it feels like each one of them would have been one of the best recruits during the FCS era because each one of them held FBS offers. Each one of them is turning down, they might not be turning down Miami's, they might not be turning down Ohio State's, of course, but they're battling with the Akrons of the world, the Kent States of the world, and they are consistently winning, the ODUs of the world, and they're consistently winning these battles. battles they would have lost just 4 years ago, 5 years ago during the Signetti era. Really, really exciting to see these players start to choose JMU. You're starting to see the kind of overall Duke's cachet rise up across the nation. And I mean, Callan, excuse me, who we'll talk to in a little bit, former Idaho guy, got on the radar of, I would assume he got on the radar of Bob Chesney. Maybe at the time he went to Georgia, but like they could have found him in Idaho. Like it's pretty crazy to see it all.
A lot of different states being included, which I think is interesting. But yeah, I mean, you look at some of the other schools that are offering some of these players. It's like Maryland, West Virginia, SMU, Purdue, Washington State. I mean, it's a lot of good schools. And then you throw in, I think people don't make a huge deal of it, but like beating ODU and some of these MAC schools like Toledo for battles. Like Toledo's been awesome for multiple years in the MAC, where they go to bowls pretty much every season. They're pushing for 10-win seasons. They're playing really good football, a lot of these teams. And even ODU last year was a pretty solid team. They outperformed expectations. They've beaten Virginia Tech in recent years. They find ways to be competitive. They were competitive with JMU last year. Like winning battles against these schools is really cool. To be in the battle is very cool, but to win them is exciting. Their portal haul is good. It gets exciting, especially if they can retain head coaches for a couple years. We'll see what happens with Chesney, but if you can keep Chesney for 2 or 3 years, you keep those players, they develop in the same system. It gets very exciting.
Yeah, and our guy Ben pointed this out, that these are recruits that are coming in from a bunch of different states as well. It's not like they're hitting Virginia extremely hard. And when they are hitting Virginia, they're winning these battles against other state schools. But you got a Florida kid, Georgia kid, Pennsylvania. They're already being represented in the class. And that just shows that they have a good hold on those states, key states, very fertile football ground states. And it's pretty exciting that Coach Bob Chesney and his whole recruiting staff has been able to go into those states early on. Official visits wrapped up about 72 hours ago, and you're able to start getting these commits to come through. We'll talk a little bit more about our overall thoughts on the class of 2025 as the commitments start to roll in. For right now, we are joined by Jerald James, a defensive end from Florida. He was one of the first today to commit to JMU, and now he's part of this 2025 class that's coming together pretty well. Jerald, how are you doing on this Wednesday?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We're excited to have you. So we'll start with the very obvious question of why JMU? You obviously had an impressive list of offers. What was it about JMU that stood out to you?
Well, JMU was the first to get me on the OV, and it was the first week of official visits, so that really stood out to me. Then when I got there, it was like it just felt like home. Like I felt all the love from everybody on the staff and stuff like that. And then when I was hanging out with the players, they just felt like teammates. Like I was cool with a lot of them. Some of them from Florida too, so we had like a little natural bond. And then their scheme and what they saw for me in the future, like, is exactly what I wanted. So it just felt like I should be there. And Coach Bob Chesney, like, a really good coach, a really good person. And
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, this is a team, JMU. They've kind of had some defensive ends that have had some success. Jalen Green was on pace to have, I think, 20 sacks last year. You've had Jamry Croma, another guy who is trying to make it into the NFL, has had some camp tryouts and things of that sort. How do you see your game fitting into JMU's defensive line, and how did the coaches kind of not sell you on it, but bring that vision to life almost?
All right, what do you mean? How did they sell me on it?
Like, so you said that the plan they have for you going down the road is something that you really enjoyed. Do you see yourself as a defensive end that's going to get a bunch of sacks, a bunch of TFLs, and be that kind of big number guy? Kind of, how do they slot you into this defense? How do you see yourself fitting in?
Oh, they have me as like if when I do end up going there, like I would be more of a pass rusher defensive end. I would be there on all 4 downs. Is that I'll mainly be on the side to like pass rush. I'll be on probably like their mainly like the boundary side, like closer to our sideline, and I'll just be pass rushing mainly and setting the edge, stuff like that. Mainly like how Jalen Green was for them last year, like that kind of.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Is that what you like to do? You mentioned the scheme sort of standing out to you. I know Florida's got crazy high-level high school football. Is that something you've enjoyed, rushing the passer and going up against some of the better offensive tackles in the state?
Yes, I love it.
What is it about that specific thing? Is it just getting home to the quarterback? Is it the actual battle with the tackle? Is it all of that? I guess what do you love about rushing the passer?
What I love about brushing the passer is like it's like chess almost. Like when you're going against a tackle, like you're like playing mind games with them. Like you set them up. Like say you do first. Like me, I'm like a speed guy.
Hmm.
So like say first play of the game, like first passing down the game, like I go speed, and then I'll just keep going speed for like a couple of drives. Then out of nowhere, I go speed to power.
Hmm.
Then sees I can make power off my speed. So like fourth quarter when it's time like to really go get the quarterback, I'll go speed and then I'll go around him. Then it's just the quarterback's just right there, and the thrill of getting the actual sack is just something that there's no other feeling like that.
I can only imagine what that's like. How would you describe your game? Do you model it after anyone currently in the NFL? Did you grow up watching anyone? How would you describe your game?
How I describe my game, I'll say like a mix of Michael Parsons and Von Miller. Like Michael
Those are
Parsons
two
is
nice
relentless,
names.
and then Von Miller is like technique and stuff like that, and how he goes about pass rushing.
I'd love to ask defensive linemen. We've had a couple on transfers and recruits and things about sort of their style. And you mentioned the mental games. Are you a trash talker? Or are you sort of a silent guy? I know some guys are kind of both, where if they're beating the tackle, they like to let them know, and other guys are just sort of silent the whole game and getting their work in. What do you prefer?
I'm more silent till somebody starts trash talking me, then I'll let them know.
That's a solid strategy.
That makes a ton of sense. I think I'd be the same way if I was capable of rushing a passer. Was there any game or throughout your high school career? I know you still got some time left, but has there been a game for you that stands out? And if it did stand out, what was it about that game that made it so special to you?
Um, Trying to think back.
No, I mainly ask this so that when we're putting together some highlight packages, I know exactly where to go in your huddle to find it, because that makes the process a whole lot easier.
I would say probably the game against Somerset. That was probably my best game because I was basically showcasing like all of my abilities, like my hard hitting, my speed, my underrated power. I was basically showing everything, my length, everything. So I'll say that game against Somerset. That was last year, my junior year, yeah.
Awesome. I think you had, if I'm not mistaken, your stats. I think you had like 20 plus tackles for loss this last year, and I think multiple forced fumbles. Is that something that you've sort of been coached on, the forced fumbles? Are they strip sacks? Are you getting a running back to fumble? I guess what are you doing to create so many forced fumbles from the defensive end spot?
It was, I think, 5 forced fumbles, and they're
Okay.
like off the running back, like just stripping the ball or just hitting him pretty hard, and he just drops the ball.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that makes sense. My last question for you is, you had offers from Maryland, SMU, West Virginia, Liberty, some big names in that list. What was it that Anthony DeMichael, Bob Chesney, the whole recruiting staff, what was it about JMU that drew you to the Dukes over some of these other schools that you had some pretty prolific offers from?
What drew me was like from those other schools mainly. It was mainly like the position coach that was like really like on me, but like at JMU, like it was like everybody there, like before I could even introduce myself, people were already like saying my name to me and stuff like that. It wasn't like at middle. So, and that was when I first walked in too. So that
That's
was
awesome.
really
That's
cool.
awesome.
I love that.
Yeah, take us through that visit a little bit. I guess what's sort of the routine for you? How many days were you there? What did you do? I guess touring facilities and things like that. But what was that process like, and what did you enjoy about it?
So we got there about like I'll say like 7 o'clock p.m. On Friday. We went out to dinner, and that was when I met my host for the first time. And then my host was Terry Lockett. He just transferred in from Syracuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was when I met him for the first time. I sat and talked with Coach Sam Daniels for a little bit. And him and my dad got to talking out a little bit. Met some of the other recruits. Then me and my host went out. Well, me and my host and some other guys went out for the night. Then the next morning we had breakfast. We had a tour. And then I'm trying to remember. Then we had took pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Then we did position meetings. I was talking with Coach Sam about like how I fit into the defense and stuff like that. And then I was talking with Coach Hemp about like what he expects, like if I were to come, what he expects for me to for me to contribute to the team. Then later that day, I talked with Coach Chesney, and he basically sold me on why JMU is the right place, because he was like saying like everything that I needed to hear from a school. Like he was saying like how I'd be able to get on the field, like with my skill set, with my ability, how I'd be able to get on the field as a true freshman, and how if I ball out here, like I'd be able to play anywhere because JMU has the competition plays at the high level and stuff like that, and that he was like, my dad really like liked him too, because like you really seen him as like a really trustworthy guy, a really good person. So he really convinced me that JMU was the right place. And then after that, I went out again with the host, and then we were just chilling for the night. And then later that morning, well, not later that morning, the next morning, we had breakfast, talked a little bit more, and then that was the end of the visit.
That's awesome. That is
That's a whirlwind.
Yeah, that's a lot to happen in a few days. But we appreciate you, Jerald, for taking the time out on your Wednesday night, talking with us a little about JMU football. Good luck. Your final high school year. Good luck with JMU. We're excited to see you suit up and put on the purple and gold.
Thank you.
Good luck to the quarterbacks.
Well, good luck to the quarterbacks. I also got to say, man, as a former marching band member, the difference in recruiting in that marching band is not really any recruiting. And then they're like going there hanging out with these other recruits, with the coaches. Student athletes are a different breed.
Yeah, it's a legit recruiting process, and cool that they're super, I guess, in tune with it. It seems like Chesney and the whole staff are really understanding of the importance of recruiting, which is good, because if you have a staff that can do that and develop and they're decent at game management, your program can really take off.
I also loved his comments when I asked who does he model his game after, and the two names are like just future first ballot Hall of Famers.
Also, I do like that they kind of sell certain things, right? Where it's like, hey, if you're an elite pass rusher, we can play you as a true freshman. Like if you have those skills, there's pathways to play, which I like, right? Because then there's just crazy competition across each position group, which is what Chesney always preaches. But to see it kind of come to life is very cool, where you can have multiple guys. And then I also thought the point about if you ball out here, you can play anywhere, very much leans into like modern college football, where like you ball out as a true freshman, like you've got an NFL future, but also like maybe you're a Buckeye in 2 years, and that's okay. So I think I thought that was interesting and makes a lot of sense. And it is good, I think, that Chesney and the coaches are very aware of the current landscape, where some of these guys might be 1 or 2 years if they play at a crazy high level.
Yeah, I mean, you look at JMU was gutted this last year from the transfer portal, but you look at it, they are all Big Ten starters now. They went from Sun Belt starters to now, I would say 90% of those who transferred to go to Indiana are going to be Big Ten starters. And like, that's pretty big, and that's going to help you get a bigger payday when the NFL comes calling in a year or 2 or 3.
And there's some guys that ran out of eligibility, like healthy Jalen Green in the portal 1 more year. Would have been fascinating. Those offers would have been nuts.
That would have been, could you imagine what he would have gotten on an open market?
Right. So yeah, I mean the talent level, it's
I mean, even some players like Jordan McLeod, who didn't have eligibility, who then got eligibility back, he got a big payday.
And they're Texas State's considered the favorite in the West. So I mean, yeah,
according to that one guy's graphic, which we don't have to dive into too much, he's the Texas State's the favorite to win it all. But JMU's a sleeper.
JMU's a sleeper.
But JMU's a sleeper. Get out of here with that. That makes no sense. The logic doesn't logic.
Well, I think the part that drives me crazy, as we're on the football topic, I've seen some fans of App and some other schools, some Sunbelt schools kind of being like, I don't know about the Dukes. There are a lot of unknowns. Like who in their right mind would think they're going to be good? And it's like, well, like every betting market in preseason metric, for one, like ESPN's FPI, SP Plus, you look at their over/under win totals, 8.5. They're like one of the favorites to win the conference. So pretty much everybody
And people are like, well, that's baking in all of their success from the last few years. They don't know, so they're just giving you the benefit of the doubt. Newsflash, that's not how computer predictive models work.
Oh, I think one of them maybe bakes in some lag, but it's like most of it is kind of like the roster that you have. And also, shouldn't some of that be a factor? Like the reason App State is considered to be good every year, in part because of history. That's part of why, like Ohio State and Michigan and Alabama, even with changes, it's like, well, they just win. That's what they do.
I also saw one JMU fan in the mentions kind of arguing it out with an App State fan where it was just like, yeah, we essentially won the East in back-to-back years with FCS players. And now, yeah, we have an entirely new roster, but they're all FBS players. And like, that's not a slight to the players. We talked about it before we brought on Jerald. You're recruiting FBS guys now. You're not recruiting FCS guys. I mean, Carpenter was awesome, but you're not recruiting an FCS walk-on anymore.
The talent level's significantly better. Like they're stealing an Eric O'Neal, who was the best defensive player in the NEC, and he's just going to start a defensive end.
And it's like they got Terry Lockett, a defensive tackle,
Syracuse starter,
and they just have him.
And so I saw some people like it's hard to gel with the coaches. It's like, well, they've been there a few months. They got spring ball. They're gonna have fall camp. And the schedule is pretty favorable this year, and the hardest games are in November. So if you're scared of like the chemistry, I'm not scared of the chemistry against Charlotte, Gardner, Ball State.
Whoa,
you got to stop with this, Charlotte.
I hate on Charlotte. The Fighting Biff Boji's got a little something up their sleeve this year.
We'll see. But maybe they do. But it's a better roster than previous years. Like it's just really, you could argue it's a better roster than last year.
You're 100%. You could argue that.
You could argue both ways, I think. But it's definitely, I think it's a deeper roster than last year.
100%. And I think, sorry, I'm making a lower third as we speak. That's why I'm kind of looking in 5 different places.
But they're going to be better at running back.
They're going to be better at running back. The offensive line.
They're better than at least one Power 5 team at running back.
The shade. I mean, and now that they have a running backs coach who played running back, that should be advantageous to the whole room.
I think the thing that people get a little caught up in is that start last year where JMU was undefeated, but a lot of those were like one possession wins. Like I think JMU can improve as a team from last year. It's not like they're a perfect team.
They were. Like, if they replayed that stretch of football again, they probably are losing 2 or 3 of those games, which probably keeps Kurt Signetti, and we're looking at a much different June right now, but that's besides the point.
They did find a way to win them, certainly. Credit.
All right, cliche.
Credit.
You just got to find a way to win.
But I think they can be better is my main. Like they've got crazy high ceiling. Also, Bob Chesney is just like known for winning. It's like a new coaching staff. Yeah, I'm not really concerned about the guy who's like was floated for like Northeast Power 5 jobs
multiple times.
Yeah.
Insane stuff. Quickly to recap some of the class of 2025 additions offensively, William Trey Dudley III. He committed earlier today. Chris Filippo, a linebacker out of Pennsylvania. We just talked with Jerald James, an edge rusher defensive end from Florida. Cole Webster, a defensive lineman out of Waxhaw, North Carolina. His tape is sick. I saw his videos.
Like his
camp stuff's pretty. And he doesn't have any stars. I was kind of shocked when I saw he didn't have any stars. Weston Sturzinger, a safety out of Ohio. He committed. He was the latest to commit. And now Kai Collin, a defensive back, a 3-star prospect out of Carrollton, Georgia, joins us now. Kai, I got to start things off. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly? Is it Collin?
Callan.
Gosh. Man.
Tough scene for Jack.
I'm not the best with last names, and we just tacked on another one. That's not a good look. But how are you doing today, Kai?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
We're doing fantastic. And first, I gotta ask. I think it said there was a graphic shared with your 40 times and some of your 100-meter times. Was that 40 time like a 4.3 or a 4?
Yeah,
that's insanely fast.
Yeah, my start is kind of like my bread and butter. So, that 1 to 40, I can really get going around there.
Yeah, you've run right 100-yard dash or whatever, 100 meters, right? Sub 11 seconds.
Track's hard.
10-7.
I know, track is hard. That's pretty impressive, though. So I imagine you run track as well.
Yeah, I do.
That's a valuable skill as a DB. How has that sort of shown up for you on the field as a DB? I imagine that helps you if even if you get out of position a little bit, you can catch up to certain receivers.
Yeah, they call it makeup speed or catch up speed. I sometimes my eyes can get bad, and I can rely on my athletic ability, to get back, get in the right spot to make a play on the ball.
That makes a
That's
ton of
awesome.
sense. Certainly helpful. Yeah.
We're trying to figure some stuff out. 247 has you listed as an athlete, the classic ATH and everything. But you're defensive back. Do you primarily play corner, safety, nickel, a mix of both? I know your graphic, I think, said nickel, but kind of how have you played in your high school career? And as you graduate on to JMU in 2025, how do you see yourself fitting into the Duke's defense?
Yeah, so back home, back in Idaho, before I came over, to Georgia, I was playing corner and slot receiver, like strictly corner, strictly slot receiver. And so that was kind of just that. And then when I came over to Carrollton, they had me as as a nickel, or they call it star, but as a nickel. And then JMU kind of picked up on that, and then now they're recruiting me as a nickel. And so I committed as a nickel, and that's kind of like the plan with that.
Awesome. You got to take me through the Idaho to Georgia journey, how that happens, and also what it was like. I imagine. I think your bio said you're like one of the top players in Idaho. What was it like to play Idaho high school football and then Georgia high school football?
Yeah, so I was the number one player in Idaho before coming over. So I was in Idaho. We won a state championship over there. Shout out Highland. Those are my guys. Those are my guys over there, man. I still talk to them every day. But my stepdad had got a job at West Georgia. He coaches D line over here, and so he was like, "Yo, like this is an opportunity to go, play against better talent. Lot more people, lot more eyes." And I was like, talk with my dad about it. He was like, "Yeah, like he's down for it. Like, of course, like yeah, I want you to go play with the best of the best." And so, hopped on a plane with 3 check bags and try to live my life out here. And it's been good though. It's been good. Culture shock for sure, but it's been good.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Idaho to Georgia. You said your stepdad's the D-line coach?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Did he ever try to get you to become maybe like a hybrid type of edge rusher type of thing, or was he okay with you playing in the secondary?
Nah, he knows. I'm not big enough to get down there in the trenches like that. So he knows that I'll cover the guys. You go get the quarterback.
That's awesome. I guess why JMU is a question we should certainly ask you. You had some other impressive offers. I think UConn and Washington State among them. Why JMU? Did you consider West Coast school with the Idaho background? What was it about the Dukes that stood out?
Yeah, really, I think the key selling point to me was, Coach Chesney, man. He's a winner. I've been winning my whole life. Like, why would I go to a program that's not winning? I love winners. So, coming over from Holy Cross, he had the background of 11 rings, 11 championships, something like that. Yeah. And I was like yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And Coach Barnes, he's my little recruiting area, or like position recruiter. And he knows this stuff. He's young, and they all want to hate on young coaches, but he's the guy. I like Coach Barnes a lot. That really helped me make a decision with my parents too.
That's awesome. You mentioned Coach Chesney. All we really see from him are these videos that JMU football's posting to social media. This man is positivity. If a sun ray was a human, it'd be Bob Chesney. Did that positivity rub off on you during your visit? Did you get a glimpse of Bob Chesney, kind of just his positivity? How did you, I don't know where I'm going with this question. He's just so positive, man.
No, I know. I get it. Cause I felt it when he was in every single room I was in, meeting rooms to I don't know, eating to everywhere, to like all the places you could really go on a recruiting trip. And like, he like sat at my table, he talked to me for like 20 minutes, was in his office, for however knows long, and just kind of talked about like the energy. There's so much energy in like within like the, the school, to like the students, to like the community around. Like, he really like speaks like, he's a what's the word for it? Like a role model for the energy and like the positivity that he brings to the community and like to JMU football.
I'd love to know his caffeine intake on a day-to-day basis. I wonder if he's like a 4 coffee guy or if it's just natural and oozes
Man,
out.
I think it's just him. I really do. I think it's just him.
It's impressive stuff. You mentioned his winning and his background. Were you surprised at all? Did you know a lot about Bob Chesney before meeting him? I guess when do you learn like, oh my gosh, this guy's really young, but he's won a ton of like conference titles?
Yeah, so I hadn't spoke to him until I don't know, probably like a month before my OV,
Mhm.
and I was like I'm not really too sure about him. I don't know like who he is yet, and so do my own research. Family doing their research. I was like, this guy is like he's not very old and he has won a lot.
Yeah.
And like he's just I like him. All I can say is I like him a lot, and that was the main selling point for committing to JMU.
Yeah, his Wikipedia is crazy when you look at like the year by year records and like conference finishes. It's just like
Yeah,
first.
it's insane. It really is.
Yeah, that is winning. We just had Jerald James on, and I asked him who he models his game after, and he went with 2 first ballot Hall of Famers. He said Micah Parsons and Von Miller. But I gotta ask you, who do you model your game after? Is there an NFL player that you've kind of watched growing up that you try to model your game after, or is it nothing and you're original?
No, I get it. As a young guy, you want to be like as a young kid, you want to be like the top corners in the league. The Jalen Ramseys and all that. Unfortunately, I am not 6'3". So growing up, I kind of found my role models in like Kenny Moore of the Colts. He's a smaller guy, and then offensively, I like Tank Dell because playing both ways. The smaller guys, we do it the best. We really do.
I love that. I love those picks. Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. I was curious too with your speed. What's your special teams background? I know Bob Chesney and the coaches love special teams. Have you returned kicks before and done things like that? I imagine coaches have seen your speed and tried to put you on the field in a bunch of ways.
Yeah, they love the upside of kick return and punt return that I have.
No, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah, but Bennett, any other questions, Bennett?
Last one, because you mentioned Jalen Ramsey, and I asked Jerald James this, but are you, when you're having a big game, you're playing really well, are you going about your business silently, or are you a trash talker?
It depends. It depends on who we're playing. It really does. Because if I know that we're gonna put you in the floor, I'm let the pads talk. Let the game talk for itself. But if it's a little dogfight, I don't mind chirping a little bit.
I like that. That's like the Michael Jordan quote or whatever. He liked to trash talk people when he was trailing, I think, in games or like tied instead rather than winning, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I get that.
Well, Kai, thank you so much for taking the time out of your. Good luck in your final season in high school, and good luck when you eventually make it to JMU and suit up for the purple and gold.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Your trash talking questions brought up a memory that I had about. I was talking with this guy who played, I think it was high school basketball with Xavier Brown, or played against him. And Xavier Brown, he said, is the best/worst trash talker. Like, he's so good at it that when you're playing against him, you hate it. So worst, but also best. That he would like, if he knew who he was guarding for a game, he'd go onto their Instagrams and like stalk them on Instagram, and then would be like, "Hey, your sister Lucy, how she's doing?" And like would bring in stuff like and like start. And when I heard that about Xavier Brown, I was like, this man's got to be day one starter. Him and Mark Freeman in the backcourt. That's going to be electric. But that is next level trash talking.
That is impressive. We got to talk about the basketball boys.
We do. Do we have anything else on football?
I think the class looks really good. I'm excited about this current team. We'll get into that more over the summer. We'll obviously track the class. Good stuff from Jerald James and Kai Collin.
Yeah, thank you to them for coming on. Very excited for what this offseason has. A lot of offseason content coming coming down the pipe. And if you want to get in with advertising during this offseason, this is a natural segue into a self-promotion into advertising this offseason or into the football season. Hit us up, email us, jmusportsnews@gmail.com. So basketball. Do you want me to give you the news or snooze quote?
Yeah, hit me.
News or snooze. Preston Spradlin said to Dave Riggert, we're going to play fast, hopefully a little faster here with the depth than what we've done in the past.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, when he says what we've done would be his previous like Moorhead teams, right?
Yeah, I'm not thinking
you're not going to be a Byington speed.
Could you imagine if they were like, all right, top 5 tempo in the nation?
I'll buy that as news. I think they'll be faster than like his really, really slow Moorhead State teams because they go so deep. We've talked about this where like they could go 10 deep if they want to. So I think he might actually do that, play a little bit faster, play to their strengths. And you could still do that without sacrificing defensive performance, I think. So I think they'll be a little bit quicker. I don't know that they'll be quick, but I don't think they're going to be like 350. I don't think they're going to be Virginia.
That's it. Okay. So do you think the reason for his slowness at Moorhead State was more so because they maybe were running 6 or 7 guys out? So in order to preserve legs throughout the season, they were going slow because, or do you think it was just the talent they had on the roster?
Maybe both. I think some of it is like, if you're not quite as talented, and they were plenty talented for the OVC, but if you're not like the most talented, sometimes just limiting the sheer number of possessions can be really valuable, which is sometimes why Virginia fans get frustrated because they have so few possessions. At times they'll play teams that they're clearly better than, and it'll be a really tight game because if Virginia's a little bit off, so few possessions, in theory, if you have more possessions and you're really good, over time you would kind of overtake the worse opponent. So I think maybe there's a little bit of both, but they're by far more talented than any team he's ever had at Moorhead State, in my opinion. And I think they're much deeper than any team he's had at Moorhead State.
Yeah. So in these last 4 years at Moorhead State, 2 of those years he made it to the NCAA tournament, but all 4 of those years, dating back to 2021, his offenses were 314th in the nation in tempo, 301, 345, and 337. The slowest team he has ever coached was the team he had with Mark Freeman as the point guard. Do you think that plays into it at all? Because Mark Freeman, OVC player of the year, preseason player of the year coming into this year, dealt with a wrist injury. We had a great interview with him over on our YouTube. You can check that out over there. But do you think that plays into his style a little bit more and that Preston Spradlin is going to go slow, maybe not 345 slow, but hover around the mid 200s to high 200s mark because Mark Freeman, that's his game? Or do you think that Mark Freeman is a chameleon and can adapt to whatever the surroundings are?
My guess, based on who was recruiting him, I think like even Memphis was interested, would be that they could run with him. But I also think that they're probably going to be more selective. Like Byington pretty much had them anytime they got a rebound. It was like a fast break. I think they'll be more. I think they'll be more selective about that, especially with 2 guys who are 6'11", and you're probably going to have one on the court at almost every time, all the time. So if you got Ebenezer or Elijah Hutchins Everett out there,
you didn't want to go Ebenezer's last name?
Ebenezer Duona.
We've pronounced it differently every podcast.
Yeah, fact check it. Somebody can fact check us there. But those guys are both pretty huge. So I think you might go and also say because of their size advantage, like, hey, if we don't have a great fast break, let's just go into half court because we're going to be good in the half court because we have 5 guys who can score because they added 10 players in the portal. And I would argue that 9 of them, like if they're not in the rotation, I would be surprised. And you can make an argument that the 10th belongs in the rotation. And they also returned Xavier Brown. Like there's 11 guys that it's like, if one of them doesn't play, I'm going to be confused.
I agree. 100%.
That's gross.
Yeah. I don't even know what a rotation is going to look like for this team. I was talking with mid-major Matt Josephs about this because he loves JMU. Check him out, 3 to 4 border to border on ESPN Richmond 106.1 FM. Shameless plug. But I was talking with him about who's playing, how they're building this roster, and like we both would just throw names at each other about who they've recruited, and we'd be like, well, what about Bryce Lindsey? He was like former top 100 recruit.
Right.
Like, what about this guy? What about this guy? Well, can you start Mark Freeman if you have Xavier? And it's just like, I don't envy what Preston Spradlin is going to have to do with trying to get everyone enough minutes to keep everyone happy.
You could do a hockey shift.
We might be seeing that. We might be seeing what Marshall's women's head coach, Kim Caldwell, was doing.
I feel like the non-conference is going to be hilarious because the number of rotations he's going to have to try out, or it's going to be a lot.
We're going to see Bryant Randleman starting against Michigan State like we did.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that when it comes around. What else we got today? We got a little baseball action. Quick recap.
Before we get to baseball.
Yeah.
Well, actually, do you want to go? We have a listener question. Do you want to go baseball or listener question? It has to do with football.
Let's do listener question.
Okay. This is from Jay Fabian on Twitter. Do we anticipate a large or small recruiting class for football? And I think this is an interesting question because in today's age, Jerald James mentioned it. If you ball out here, you can play anywhere. In today's day and age, especially at the group of 5 level, especially at JMU's level, where you've been a top G5 team these last few years, you in theory can bring in a lot of transfer portal talent. Do you build up a large recruiting class like you did maybe 5 years ago? Or do you hold back your recruiting class a little bit, let them go to like maybe the Power 5s or maybe even low level go FCS, and you keep some scholarships open to recruit some guys who may be fallen from the P5 ranks?
Yeah, they're going to have a lot of options. They've got I would say probably at least 15, and it's probably higher than that. I would have to go through and double check on some of the seniors, but I think they have like at least 15 guys graduating, like that just won't have eligibility anymore. So you've got those guys that are definitely leaving. You have to imagine some players would transfer, even if they're like guys who aren't playing and want more playing time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, you could do a lot of it with, certainly you could try to fill in and go with like 20 high school guys. I feel like they'll probably be in like the 10 or 15 range, and then 10 or 15 with portal, with the assumption that Chesney's obviously building with the belief in his mind that he's staying.
Yeah.
Obviously, if Chesney has like an incredible year, takes him to the playoff, takes a Power 5 job, it's going to be the same cycle as before, where they're going to bring in like 30 transfers. But I think the way Chesney will build it would probably be, I think he'll focus pretty hard on high school, with then also leaving the ability to add like starting potential replacements via the portal would be my guess.
I like that. I think that's a good approach.
I'm a portal sucker though. You know me. So if it was me, I'd just be a portal boy. But
you are a big time portal boy.
Well, let me throw a question back at you.
Okay, portal boy.
We don't believe Chesney. We think Chesney's so good that he could be gone very quickly, right?
Yes, 100%.
Do you think he considers that then and goes with a smaller high school class with the assumption that if he does stay one more year, he's going to try to win 12 games with a portal heavy class?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But
I think coaches are insane humans, and football players, anyone involved in the sport of football, even media people. You got to be a little sick in the head. You're giving up your Saturdays. You're giving up your whatever. But what I'm getting at is he doesn't think he's probably good enough to go to a P5 job in a year. Like, he's probably like, I'm going to be here for the rest of my career. Like when coaches say that, like when Curt Cignetti said that and we crucified him because he left for Indiana 2 months later, he meant it. Coaches don't think that they can go and move on most of the time. They're egomaniacs, but I don't think they're sitting there like, okay, I think Penn State's going to open up this year, and I'm a shoo-in for that job in October. I think in October, November,
that either, yeah.
They are very much in the moment. So I think as he's building out the roster, I think he has a legitimate 5-year plan in his head that he thinks he's going to be here for 5 years.
The other, like the cynic in me, he could also just take them. Like if you bring in,
like Curt Cignetti did.
Yeah, so you might as well recruit really good high school kids that you like, because if you leave, you'd still take half for all.
So while we're still on football here, Vegas has their win total this year set at 8.5.
Yeah.
If JMU hits 8 or 9, so they're hovering right around that number that Las Vegas has set, do you think Bob Chesney is back next year?
I think it would depend on openings. and like what options he has. But if he goes out and they go 9-3 and finish second in the East to App State and win a bowl game and go 10-3, based on what he's also done at the FCS level, I still think he's a hot candidate for Power 5 jobs.
Even if all Northeast seats are filled, because Boston College probably is going to be filled for at least another 1 to 2 years. Syracuse is going to be filled for another 1 to 2 years. What Northeastern job is opening in the next 24 months?
I don't know that he necessarily needs to take a Northeast job.
Okay.
All
right, fair.
He's also like a lunatic in the best way, right? Like every recruit we talk to is like, yeah, what did Kai say? I like him. Like, I don't know what, like, I just like him. I feel like everybody who talks about Chesney is like, yes, that, I like that. Like his ability to sell an AD, I think is so easy because he's just like, he's so positive.
Yeah, but he also probably could have left Holy Cross much sooner than when he did. And he stuck around.
I think
Assumption College he could have left, but sorry, I keep interrupting you, but I got these takes bubbling up that we've been sitting on these for like 3 weeks. He stayed at Assumption College probably longer because he waits for the opportunity that is best. So do you think he takes that Indiana job?
He might not. He might wait for like the opportunity that he really, really likes.
Like
so
when Ryan
I get that
fired in a year and he can take Ohio State.
But they might go for a bigger name.
I'm kidding.
But he'd be sick though. I think the thing that fascinates me with him is that he did take a while to leave the Northeast, but he did. And that's what I wonder if this is the move that he's like, all right, I'm going. Like I'm all the F in on just being a superstar.
But did he leave the area that he knows? He said it in his opening press conference. Like he grew up not in the area, but he grew up along 81 within like a 2-hour radius of JMU, coached early on in his career at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. Like this region of America isn't this unknown to him. So if he went to Florida and decided I'm going to go coach at FIU with the Florida International Panthers, then I see what you're saying. But it feels almost as if this was another calculated step where, okay, I know the lay of the land there a little bit.
It'll depend on openings for sure. And I do think JMU is a very appetite. Like it would not stun me if he stayed like 3 years, just had 3 great seasons and then took a very enticing Power 5 job. I also wouldn't be shocked if if they go undefeated. I think he's that good a coach. They go undefeated, make the college football playoff, and some legit Power 5 is like, I need you. And he goes, cool, sure.
Yeah, I do think over under 8.5 wins.
I don't think there's any.
Don't get Reese Davis here.
There's no way they go under. Like, there's just no way they go under. And they could, but if they go under, it's 7 or 8. Like they're not winning like 4 games.
I agree with that.
I think the floor is like 8.
That's it though. That the floor is 8, but the floor that November's tough, man.
I guess so. Georgia State at ODU at App State versus Marshall. I just think that they're
also Marshall might not be actually that bad because they just lost their QB to retirement.
We'll see how good Marshall really is. We'll see how Georgia State might be a dumpster fire. ODU has been competitive, and I just think the other part that's fascinating about this is like none of the road games are that far. So like Charlotte's going to have a lot of JMU fans.
Charlotte will probably actually, they're doing a lot of really creative marketing strategies where like buy a ticket to the JMU game, like get 3 free tickets.
But they'll feel you, you know?
Oh, I see. I had no idea what you meant by they.
Like they're like, even if it's not like mostly purple, like they're going to notice their fans there. I think the same, maybe not so much at UNC, but ULM sucks. So that crowd doesn't matter. Georgia Southern's a weird place to play. So I get that one, but they have a mini bye. And then ODU fans, we'll see if they're good, but if they're not good, that's mostly purple. And then they play at App State, which is very hard. But even if you lose that game, what are you, 11-1, 10-2, even 9-3, plus a bowl and go with a bowl included? Like if they don't, I know that's not included in the win total for Vegas, but God, I don't know. If they don't win 8+ games, I think fans are going to be really disappointed based on the schedule and the roster.
Great points. Football wrapped up right there.
All right, baseball boys.
Baseball boys, Wyatt Pfeiffer wins the ABCA Gold Glove. He's one of the best third basemen in the nation. First ever JMU player to win a Gold Glove.
Good for him. Good for them. Good season. All positives in my book.
Pfeiffer committed just 7 errors this year, had 138 assists, was a part of 21 of JMU's 59 double plays turned, and he ranked 3rd in the country per 643 charts in defensive runs saved. I mean, he was a brick wall at third base that could field the ball.
Entire team and Ike shut me up this year. I was just very pleased. I thought they did a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, they shut me up too, and they got me to apologize.
And you can see Daniel Merriman's conversation with Katie Harper about the season on our YouTube page.
Oh, look at you. That was just a clean plug.
Yes, yes.
Call yourself an outlet because that was a clean plug.
Well said.
Thank you. All right, anything else you got to add?
No.
As you push your breasts into the camera?
We'll probably have some more recruiting talk and some fun football stuff the rest of the summer.
Yeah, we're looking to...
Can't wait for camp.
I can't wait for camp. I'm going to try and get out there as often as possible.
Richmond
boy. I'm only 2 hours away now.
Yes, you are.
Should be fun. Trying to get out to camp, trying to get out to cover these games. Working with ESPN Richmond, I've infiltrated the official home of University of Richmond so that I can just push JMU propaganda on them. We'll see how that goes.
Preach, man.
I try to. Doing the Lord's work. All right, for Bennett Conlon, I'm Jack Fitzpatrick. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the JMU Sports News Podcast presented by Bet Online. We look to be back next week. We shouldn't have another 3-week hiatus coming up anytime soon. Until then, have a wonderful rest of your night. See ya.